All right, we'll get started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this morning. I am Ted Reinhardt, Retirement Plan and Institutional Director here at JFS Wealth Advisors. I will be your host and moderator for today's webinar. While our business retirement plan team here at JFS focuses on plans and strategies that can help to meet individual retirement goals, mainly through saving and investing wisely, there are certainly other aspects that can get you to the retirement finish line that are important to factor into a successful retirement. And certainly Medicare is one of those items. Today's discussion is entitled Medicare Made Simple: What You Need to Know Before You Enroll. Throughout the presentation this morning, we'll be covering different parts of Medicare and their key differences, enrollment timelines, common mistakes, and maximizing coverage through supplemental plans. With me today to review these topics is Michael Johnson. He is the Director of Medicare and Individual Insurance at Davic Benefit Consultants. As the Director of Medicare and Individual Insurance at Davic, Mike has extensive experience helping individuals understand their Medicare options and select plans that match their health and financial needs. He is a trusted resource for those seeking straightforward, practical advice during one of life's most important transitions. After being born and raised in Grove City, PA, Mike attended Eastern University outside of Philadelphia, graduating with a degree in accounting and finance. For the last 15 years, Mike has operated as the Director of Medicare and Individual Insurance at Davic. During that time, the agency has grown from only him in the department to a team of 6 that focus on significant need of planning and education of health insurance, assisting individuals entering and throughout retirement. 3 housekeeping items quickly before we begin. Please see that at the bottom there is a Q&A function. If you would like to submit a question or questions for the question and answer period, which will lead after the presentation is completed, please submit through that function. We do control the microphone mute feature, so you will notice that your microphone is turned off, so any unintentional background noises do not interfere with the presentation. And lastly, should you need to depart early, or if you would like to listen to the presentation again, this webinar is being recorded and will be available to all attendees within the next few days. So without further ado, I'll turn the presentation over to Mike to lead the discussion on the key topics of Medicare.
Great. Thank you, Ted. And good morning, everybody. As Ted mentioned, this is kind of my day in and day out. And actually doing these Medicare presentations is one of the favorite things that I get to do for different types of advisor groups and for employer groups. As we go through this today, this really is going to be an educational overview. As you get to a point where you're really evaluating this, it is important to do it on an individual basis so that you're looking at yourself, your needs, and making decisions based on that. This is really to help give you a base, give you a firm understanding of how the core of Medicare works and how some of the different types of plans work, but certainly not any recommendations going to be made on an individual basis here today. Ted gave a great intro for myself. Again, 15 years of experience doing this, do it on day in, day out basis, work with people all throughout the country on their Medicare needs and Medicare planning. As we go through today's presentation, just to give you a little bit of an overview on what we're going to be talking about, we'll be talking about eligibility and enrollment in Original Medicare, talk about the 2 federal parts of Medicare, which are Part A and Part B, talk about Medicare supplement plans, Part D prescription drug coverage, Medicare Advantage plans, and do a little bit of a wrap up at the end. You will notice as we're going through the presentation today, I do start at ground zero. I assume everybody knows nothing, and that way as we build up, we are all going in the same direction. I don't like to assume anything. So initially here, let's talk about the eligibility and enrollment in Original Medicare. So first of all, who's eligible for Medicare? Medicare is eligible from an age-based standpoint for anybody that is 65 years or older. Medicare generally would begin the first day of the month that you turn 65. So if you were born on June 30th, as you are turning 65, you are actually going to get when you get your Medicare card, as you apply for it, that earliest effective date is going to be a June 1 start date. The only exception to that rule is if you are born on the first day of a month, your Medicare becomes effective the month prior. So if you were born June 2nd through June 30th, you'll have a June 1 start date for your Medicare. You were born on June 1st, you get your Medicare card. It's actually going to have a May 1 effective date on there. So that's just something to be aware of. I've got a lot of people that are retiring that if their birthday's at the end of the month, they think that, that's not, that they have to work and get their insurance through that month in order to make sure there's no lapse. You turn 65 first of the day, first of the month that you turn 65. Somebody can also become eligible based on receiving Social Security disability. Once somebody receives essentially their first Social Security disability check, after 24 months, Medicare would kick in the 25th month. That is no matter the age for that particular individual. There are also two medical conditions that generate Medicare eligibility. That is end-stage renal disease or end-stage kidney failure, as well as ALS, otherwise known as Lou Gehrig's disease. So many significant medical conditions, cancers and strokes, et cetera, but don't generate Medicare eligibility of themselves. Those two medical conditions do generate Medicare eligibility. Certainly other ones may generate it based on disability. But those are the three ways that you can become eligible for Medicare: based on age, based on disability, or two certain medical conditions or having a diagnosis of those. As far as enrolling into Medicare, Medicare and Social Security are two separate entities. However, Social Security does handle the enrollment portion of Medicare. So the ways that you can do it, you can go through your local Social Security office, stop by your local Social Security office, give them a call. A lot of them are still trying to avoid doing in-person meetings if possible, but they would set up a phone appointment with you if they're not doing in-person meetings. You can call the National Social Security Office, which is the 1-800-772-1213. I'd say that's probably the option of last resort, just because that's a good way to sit on hold for 2 or 3 hours. So I try to go to your local Social Security office first, avoid the National Social Security Office. Last way that you can sign up is through the Social Security website, which is the SSA.gov. That's really where they're trying to push everybody. If you are drawing Social Security prior to age 65, it is an automatic trigger that they activate your Medicare as you approach age 65. So if you're drawing Social Security at 62, 63, 64, you're 3 months out from your 65th birthday, you're just going to open the mail one day, there's going to be your red, white, and blue Medicare card. If you are delaying signing up for your Social Security retirement benefits, but you still need Medicare, you do need to proactively sign up for it. That's a little bit of a misconception where people think that there is some part of Medicare that happens automatically as you're turning 65, no matter if you're drawing Social Security or not. That is incorrect. If you're not drawing Social Security, there is no automatic enrollment for Medicare Part A or Part B. You do proactively need to sign up for those parts if you are not drawing your Social Security benefits, but again, do need Medicare. Your initial time frame for signing up for Medicare is a 7-month window. It's the 3 months before you turn 65, the month you turn 65, and the 3 months after you turn 65. If you were to enroll in the 3 months leading up to the month of your birthday, your Medicare effective date will be the first day of the month you turn 65, as we had talked about. If you enroll in the month of your birthday or the 3 months after that, your Medicare will become effective the first of the upcoming month. This 7-month window really is only applicable if you actually need to enroll into Medicare. There are special election periods down the road, such as loss of employer coverage, which is probably the most popular one that's utilized, where you don't have to fall into this 7-month window or be concerned about missing it. This is if you need Medicare as you're approaching age 65, 3 months before the month of, and 3 months after is your time frame. The 3 months leading up to that is probably the time frame that we'd want to target, just to make sure there's no lapse in coverage. One of the most common conversations. So again, been doing this for 15 years. I have this conversation almost daily, much more than I had 15 years ago for sure. So there are more people working beyond age 65 than ever before. There's a lot of misinformation and misconceptions out there about what needs to be done, what should be done as somebody is approaching age 65, but maybe still working. People are going to tell you you're going to be penalized, or you're going to miss your time frame, or you're not going to be able to sign up later, whatever the case may be. I'd say most of that information that comes through is incorrect. So if the two rules for not needing to sign up for Medicare at age 65 is if you or your spouse is A, actively employed, and B, you have employer sponsored health coverage due to that active employment, you can delay signing up for Medicare without penalty as long as you meet those two criteria. So it's you or your spouse actively employed and have employer sponsored health coverage due to that active employment, you can delay Medicare without penalty. So if you're potentially going to fall into that category, rest easy. There's nothing you absolutely have to do at that particular time. However, I do dig into that a little bit more. There's a checklist that I've put together just because not every situation is exactly the same. So Medicare does have something called Medicare Secondary Payer Guidelines. It's really split into small employers and then what Medicare considers larger employers. Small employers is 19 or fewer employees. So if you have work for a small company, 19 or fewer employees, Medicare says that they should be primary and your group health plan should be secondary. What happens at this point is most group health insurance plans do enforce this. So if you work with a smaller employer, even if you're still actively working, you really should still sign up for Medicare Part A and Part B, which we'll talk in more detail about, in order to make sure that your claims are going to be paid appropriately. So Medicare would pay first. The insurance company is going to fill in and pay for whatever's on the back end after what Medicare pays for. If it's a group of 20 or more employees, you work for what they would consider a larger employer, then the group health plan is primary, Medicare is secondary. With that being the case, everything's going to run through that group health plan, just like it always has for you. And you really don't need to worry about doing much in terms of signing up for Medicare at that particular point. That can all be done down the road, but certainly we're able to have a conversation on, is there any benefit to doing that, even if you have a group health plan and you work for a company with 20 or more total employees. Moving down from there, should I enroll in Medicare Part A? So again, we're going to talk about Part A and Part B here in the next couple slides, but Medicare Part A itself does not generally cost anything. All the years that you and your spouse have worked and paid taxes, you've paid into Medicare Part A. So there's no cost for it. So most people say, well, I should sign up for it. I want to get registered, get in the system. It's not going to cost me anything. And I would generally say, yes, that's correct. If even if you're still working, I'd probably go ahead and sign up for Medicare Part A, get you in the system. It makes the process down the road a little bit more efficient. However, if you contribute to an HSA, I would say you would generally want to not sign up for Medicare Part A. Medicare Part A is considered a first dollar payer. What that means is if you have a first dollar payer and enrolled into a plan where you contribute to an HSA, you become ineligible to contribute to an HSA at that point. So that is something we want to be wary of. HSA is just becoming more and more popular. So if you do contribute to an HSA, you actually would not even want to sign up for Part A, even though it has no cost associated with it. The one note I'll make about this is there is a bill that just got passed. It's a budget reconciliation passed by the House. It's the big, beautiful bill. There is a part of that bill that says that even if somebody has Medicare Part A, they can still contribute to an HSA. That is not through Senate, and has not been finalized, but there is some possibility there may be change to that guideline down the road. So it's something that we need to keep our eye on. What happens beyond age 65 whenever you do need to sign up for the second part of Medicare, which is called Part B? It's the part you pay for. So it is the part generally that you would continue to definitely delay if you are still working and have employer-sponsored coverage. There's a 40B, which is an application for enrollment in Medicare Part B. That's one that you complete. But then there is an employer form. And the reason your employer has to complete a form at that point is they have to note how long you've been employed or your spouse has been employed and how long you've been covered by that group health plan to show that you have met the criteria of actively employed and had employer-sponsored health coverage due to active employment since the time that you turned 65. That's what gets you into Medicare Part B down the road without a penalty, no questions asked. One thing to note, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this because, again, it could be a moot point, but it's also just something that may not apply to many people. If you do not sign up for Medicare Part A at age 65 because you're contributing to an HSA, when you do sign up down the road, your Part A will be retroactive 6 months from the date that you applied. So if you apply in August, your Part A is going to retroactively go into effect for February of that particular year. That can limit what your HSA total contribution should have been for that year. So we do need to do a little bit of planning if you happen to fall into that category. Again, you have me as a resource for these types of questions and for this type of planning down the road. I'm happy to talk through that with you if that is a category that you fall into. This is just a quick look at those two Social Security forms to enroll in Medicare Part B down the road. They just look like what any government form, I think, would generally look like. I always keep the most up-to-date forms of these. I'm happy to get these to you to make sure that you have the appropriate forms and can get you fax numbers or information and get them to your local Social Security office for processing as well. For anybody that does have an HSA, once you do make the move over to Medicare, maybe you have retired, but you have a little nest egg of HSA funds still available. Those funds don't go away. Those are your personal funds. You can still use them for qualified expenses. You can use them to pay for your Medicare Part B premium, Part C premium, and Part D premiums. The only one you can't use it for is what's called Medigap or Medicare supplement premiums, but you can use it for those particular Medicare premiums. Certainly, you can continue to use them for any qualified medical, dental, or vision expenses, deductibles, co-pays, things that you have costs associated with. You can use those funds to pay for that. The last thing is HSA funds can be used to cover the part of a tax qualified long-term care insurance policy or the part of the premium for that as well. So if you have a long-term care policy, talk to your advisor about what the maybe the tax qualified portion that would be. You could reimburse yourself through an HSA for that particular portion of the premium. So as we move over to the two federal parts of Medicare, this is really your base of Medicare. Your starting point of Medicare is Part A and Part B. Only way you can get those are through the federal government. So as we jump into Medicare Part A is your hospitalization coverage. Inpatient coverage, call it your room and board, just your bed in a room in a hospital. As long as you or your spouse has worked for 10 years or 40 quarters and paid Medicare taxes over that time frame, you've paid into Medicare Part A for both of you. So there's no cost for 99 point some odd percent of people. As we go through Medicare Part A on this page and Medicare Part B on the next page, I think the one thing just to be aware of is this is a base. This is a starting point. I generally don't recommend that people only have Medicare Part A and Part B because as you're going to see on this page and the next page, there is the possibility of more potential out-of-pocket expense for medical services than most people would like or plan for. That's why we'll talk about supplements. We'll talk about advantage plans just so you have an idea maybe what you can do in addition to this. So don't let this slide and the next slide scare you off in terms of I'm never going to be able to retire. This is the starting point. So with Medicare Part A and inpatient hospitalization, the first 60 days of a hospitalization, you have a $1,676 deductible. That is per benefit period, which is essentially almost per admission. So if you're hospitalized in February, you're hospitalized in June, you're hospitalized in October, you're 1676, 1676, 1676. Now, if you're hospitalized for 61 to 90 days, you'll pay $419 per day, days 61 to 90, above and beyond that deductible that was paid. If it stays 91 to 150, it jumps up to $838 per day, or after day 150, Medicare itself does not cover. However, supplements and advantage plans generally will continue to cover you at that particular point. So great that Medicare provides this, not necessarily robust from a coverage standpoint. So it kind of gives us that base and that starting point. It is hard to be hospitalized 60 days, let alone 6 days. But somebody going through a transplant type situation, I mean, I've had people up in that $150 or 150-day range because of those types of situations. Just not common at this particular point. Medicare Part B is all of your medical services. So A is your stay in the hospital, your room and board. B is the actual medical services being performed. Office visits, lab work, x-rays, surgeries, chemotherapy, etc. Medicare Part B is going to be your starting point cost-wise when you're looking at Medicare, which is $185 per month. That is the base premium for 2025. It does adjust annually, and that amount is set by the federal government. Again, that's one reason why if somebody's still working, if they work for an employer with 20 or more employees, still working, certainly can do an evaluation on your group health coverage compared to making a full jump to Medicare. But if you determine your group health plan is the best option for you, there's no sense in signing up for Part B and paying $185 a month for something that's really not going to provide a benefit to you. But as you do make a jump fully over to Medicare, you're enrolled in Medicare Part B, you're paying the Part B premium. The way that the the coverage for Part B works is a $257 calendar year deductible. So it is different than Part A, where it's almost per occurrence. The Part B deductible is $257. After that, what happens is what most people think about when they think about Medicare, which is 80/20. You reach that 257 deductible, Medicare is covering 80% of your claims, you're paying the remaining 20%. Again, reason why we look at some additional types of coverage to help protect your out-of-pocket is if you're going through major surgeries, you're going through chemotherapy, you're paying 20% of the cost. There's no cap with federal Medicare itself. You just keep paying 20%. You don't hit a certain number and government says, okay, Mike, you've paid enough. You don't pay 20% of your services anymore. You just keep paying the 20%. So again, something we look at just to help protect your out-of-pocket expense. But that's how federal Medicare works very quickly. That's Part A. That's Part B. Your starting point is going to be $185 a month. That's generally going to be deducted from your Social Security check. If you are not drawing Social Security but are enrolled in Medicare, Medicare is going to bill that to you quarterly. One thing to note is Medicare Part B premiums, you can have something called IRMA, Income Related Monthly Adjustment Amount. It does go by whether you file an individual or a joint tax return. So if you file, you can see on the screen there, an individual return at 106,000 or less, or a joint at 212 or less, your premium is $185 a month, which is that base premium. Government does use a rolling 2-year look back. So right now in 2025, they're using your 2023 income from your tax return. The reason for that, as of January 1st of 2025, nobody had filed their 2024 tax return yet. Last guaranteed tax return they had for everybody was 2023. So it is a rolling 2-year look back. We get to 2026, they automatically look at 2024. So that Part B premium, it might go up or down for you based on how your income has flowed over time. You are able to appeal that income-related adjustment. So two of the reasons you can appeal: work stoppage, work reduction. So if you do retire mid-year, your income's not going to be as high as it had been in the past. You can appeal that with Social Security. Moving on to Medicare supplements. So we've talked about federal Medicare. It's your starting point. It's your base. We've got two types of plans that we look at to help protect your out-of-pocket. They come in just two buckets. You can either look at Medicare supplement plans or Medicare Advantage plans. As we talk through those, there's not one that's right or wrong or good or bad. They're just different. Pros and cons, like most things in life. So we'll talk about the Medicare supplements first and how they operate. Medicare supplements, they're otherwise known as Medigap plans, really do what they say. They are going to supplement federal Medicare or fill in the gaps that Medicare itself does not pay for. So the deductibles, the 20% that we were looking at on the last couple screens, Medicare supplements help fill in for those amounts. So the way that these plans operate is you'd have your red, white, and blue Medicare card and a supplemental card. You go to doctors, hospitals, any type of medical provider. Here's my red, white, and blue card. Here's my supplemental card. That medical provider runs the claim through Medicare. Whatever they don't pay due to the deductibles and the 20%, your supplement's going to fill in for some or all of those amounts, depending on the plan that we think is most appropriate for you. Two primary pluses to that type of plan. The first one, no provider network, no referrals. So with a Medicare supplement, they are very flexible. Because federal Medicare is your primary insurance, you can go to any doctor or hospital in the United States that accepts federal Medicare. They have to accept your supplement. So if you do a lot of traveling, you're a snowbird, you have a second home someplace, this provides some peace of mind in terms of flexibility and not having to be worried about, am I in network? Am I out of network? As long as you're going to a provider that accepts Medicare, you're going to be covered. Again, in the 15 years, I think I've only come across one time somebody found somebody didn't participate with Medicare itself. And that particular facility is not even in business at this point. So Medicare supplements are very flexible. The other part of them that's a plus is they're pretty rich in terms of keeping your potential medical expense to a bare minimum. So we'll take a look at that here in about 2 slides so you can get an idea of what these plans look like and how they actually cover. A few notes with Medicare supplements: they are only available at guaranteed issue within 6 months of your Part B becoming effective. So whether that's at age 65 or you delay your Part B and you sign up at a later date because you continue to work beyond age 65, you have a 6-month window to sign up for a Medicare supplement, no questions asked. If you want to go with a different type of plan, an Advantage plan, for example, and come to a supplement down the road, you'd have to answer medical questions in order to qualify. So you do have kind of one shot to get these plans, no questions asked. Otherwise, you would have to answer a medical question to qualify for this particular type of plan. Medicare supplements are standardized, which means no matter what company that you're looking at, a plan G is a plan G is a plan G, a plan N is a plan N is a plan N. They are going to be exactly the same. Again, there's no network differences. There's not going to be any benefit net differences. Really, what you're looking at with this type of plan is making sure that you have a competitive upfront cost and that you have a reputable carrier that over time, I can promise you with these plans, the rates are going to go up because they're generally age-based, but that it's going to be somewhat incremental. It's not going to be spikes. And so that's partly my job or somebody like me, what we should be doing for you if you're looking at this type of plan. Last note to make with Medicare supplements, they don't include prescription drug coverage, so you do have to add a separate Part D prescription drug plan. Just to give you an idea of cost and then what the benefits are, these rates are based on kind of Pittsburgh area where I am. It does vary based on where you reside. So Philadelphia, Jersey, New York, Arizona, Florida, rates are going to look different based on where you reside. This might give you at least somewhat of a ballpark as a starting point. So Plan G and Plan N, again, standardized Medicare supplements, you might have 30 companies in your area that offer these plans. They're going to be identical from a coverage standpoint. So they each have a $257 deductible. If that sounds familiar, that's because that is just a pass-through of the Medicare Part B deductible. As of January 1st of 2020, the government said all people enrolling at this point moving forward basically have to at least be responsible for the Part B deductible. So that's why you see the $257 deductible there. Plan G, what you're going to see is after you meet that $257 deductible, you're going to see a bunch of zeros. Physical therapy, office visits, surgeries, hospitalizations, chemo. You meet $257, you shouldn't see a medical bill the rest of the year after that as long as it's a Medicare covered service. Medicare and your Plan G would cover 100% of those services. Plan N, small step back, you're going to see there is some premium difference there. You do save some money on a monthly basis that you pay to the insurance company. Same exact deductible. Really, the only differences are after you meet that $257, you would pay $20 copays for office visits, $50 for the emergency room. Everything else is covered in full. The only disclaimer, because I'm likely talking to people that are from around the United States here. Providers are allowed to bill up to 15% more than the Medicare allowed amount. Plan G does cover that. Plan N does not. Now, if you reside in Pennsylvania, Ohio, those states do not allow providers to bill excess charges. So moot point, there's no difference there. But if you reside in a different state, there's a possibility excess charges could be billed. It's not common. It's generally not very much, but that could be one difference depending on the state you reside in. Sometimes that can make a decision for some people just to give them some additional peace of mind and protection. But that's Medicare supplement, very flexible, go where you need to go. It's going to keep your potential medical expense to a bare minimum. These are the more expensive type of plans though, but they certainly have their place. From there, we'll move over to Part D prescription drug plans. There are two ways that you can obtain a Part D prescription drug plan. You can either purchase it as a standalone, which that's what you would do is if you decided a Medicare supplement that we just talked about is the best fit for you, you would purchase a Part D, a separate standalone Part D prescription drug plan. If you go with a Medicare Advantage plan, which we'll talk about in a couple of slides, Part D coverage generally comes integrated with those plans. It comes bundled like most people are used to through an employer plan. You've got one card, doctors, hospitals, pharmacy. Here's my card. So with these Part D plans, one misconception or thought is that because it's called Part D, that the government itself actually provides a prescription benefit. They do not. The government provides a standard model every year that says, if you as a private insurance company want to offer a Part D prescription drug plan, it has to fit within the box that we've created or be better than that. So they do have to be approved by Medicare every year, but Medicare themselves do not actually offer a Part D plan. They generally do have some type of premium associated with them, but it varies based on the plan and based on where you reside. Every single Part D plan has to cover at least 2 drugs in every therapeutic category. So whether you go with a very inexpensive prescription plan or a very expensive one, all have to cover at least 2 drugs in every therapeutic category. So there's not going to be some type of diagnosis or prescription that's needed that's just completely unavailable, there have to be prescriptions available for all the various different types of diagnosis that may come out. There are some changes, excuse me, to Part D for 2025. Some of you that are maybe approaching age 65 may have heard friends or family members in the past talk about the donut hole. Maybe your parents, you've heard them talk about the donut hole, and it was always the thorn in the side of Medicare beneficiaries. It was removed for 2025, so there is no longer a donut hole on Medicare plans. There's also now a $2,000 maximum where nobody in Medicare can spend more than $2,000 in prescription costs per year. Historically, that was not the case. In 2024, that ceiling was somewhere around $3,400 or $3,500 per member. 2023 and prior to, there was no ceiling. You could continue paying. If you had a $20,000 chemotherapy medication, you generally pay about 5% of that, or you pay about $1,000 a month for that medication, in addition to some costs for other medications. Now you have a hard cap at $2,000. So that same $20,000 oral chemotherapy medication, once you've paid for it and other medications and you hit $2,000, you don't pay anything after that. So there is a ceiling on those now. There's a payment smoothing program. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. It doesn't make sense for most people. If you're working with an advisor on your Medicare, they'll tell you if that's going to be a beneficial program. It's just not for most people. And then just to give you an idea, that standard model that Medicare says, hey, your plans have to be this good or better, is a $590 deductible, plus you paying 25% of the cost of your medications after that, up to that $2,000 cap. I would say most plans are richer than that, but that's what that standard model looks like. I'm not going to take you through this slide. It would take us a little while to explain, but what I want to show on this screen is you basically are credited with the greater of what you would pay under Medicare's model or what you're actually paying under your particular Medicare prescription drug plan. So if you have a prescription drug plan that is very rich, you might only pay $210 for your prescriptions over the course of the year and actually be credited like you've hit your $2,000 ceiling, and you don't pay anything after that the rest of the year. So even though there's a $2,000 cap, if you have some expensive medications, it's not a guarantee that you actually pay $2,000 to hit that ceiling. Different plans have different structures. It's possible, based on a variety of plans, that you could actually hit your ceiling and not come anywhere near actually paying the $2,000. And now on to Medicare Advantage plan. So we've talked about Medicare supplements already. That's one avenue that you have to go with. Medicare Advantage plans are the second type of plan that you can go with. And it is referred to as Part C, again, only offered through private insurance companies, but they do have to be approved and meet Medicare standards. Medicare Advantage plans are going to operate differently than supplements. Medicare Advantage plans are going to operate as more of a replacement to your federal Medicare. So we'll use Aetna as an example. If we said, okay, Aetna Medicare Advantage plan, best fit for Mike, we complete the enrollment form, we send it to Aetna. Aetna gets the enrollment form, they forward it to Medicare. Once Medicare gets that enrollment notification, they say, okay, Aetna, Mike wants to go with you for his Medicare coverage. You, Aetna, are responsible for taking care of him, paying his claims for him, making sure he's covered at least as well as we, Medicare, would cover him, if not better than that. Because Mike has paid us all this money over the years he's worked in taxes, because he's paying us this Part B premium on a monthly basis, we, Medicare, are going to turn around and we're going to pay you, Aetna, X amount of dollars a month to help take care of Mike. So first type of plan, we talked about Medicare, your primary insurance, the private insurance company or the supplement fills in on the back end. Medicare Advantage plan is Medicare almost turning off in a sense, and all they're going to do is contract your insurance out to a private insurance company. And so instead of carrying around a red, white, and blue card, a supplement card, and a prescription card, here's my Aetna card, my United Healthcare card, my Blue Cross Blue Shield card, whatever it might be, doctors, hospitals, pharmacy, everything flows through that one plan. By doing that, we need to be a little bit more diligent from a network standpoint. So if you're using Aetna, we need to make sure you're going to doctors and hospitals that participate with Aetna, not any doctor or hospital that participates with Medicare. So we have to be more diligent from a provider standpoint. The big draw to these plans, your premiums can be as low as zero. I would say most places as low as zero. There's really not a need to go over $50 a month for an Advantage plan in most states. They do also provide some additional benefits that you do not get with Medicare and a supplement typically. Things like gym benefits, vision, dental, hearing benefits. Again, your prescriptions are integrated. So you do get some ancillary benefits bundled with these types of plans. With these plans, you do have that time frame, that 7-month window, 3 months before, the month of, and 3 months after your 65th birthday to enroll. If you happen to retire mid-year, you have a special election period of 60 days to enroll. So you've got time. You don't have to line it up with an open enrollment period. If you retire mid-year, you can certainly get into a plan at that point. You also have the ability to change this plan every year. Between October 15th and December 7th, you can adjust your coverage on an annual basis. And these types of plans are always guaranteed issue. Where I told you on the supplements, you had a 6-month window around your Part B effective date. These plans, you could have Aetna 1 year, jump to United Healthcare Advantage Plan the next year, to a Blue Cross Blue Shield, no questions asked. You can make decisions based on what's best for you. Those changes from October 15th to December 7th take place for January 1. These are some examples of Advantage plans. These are Western Pennsylvania-based plans, so they're not specific to Philadelphia, Jersey, other states, but these are some examples. Medicare Advantage plans, again, generally low premium. They generally do not have deductibles associated with them. They are required to have a max out of pocket, though. So the supplements, high premiums, your worst case scenario from out-of-pocket expense for medical services was a couple $100s. Advantage plans, you're going low premium, but your worst case scenario is a few $1,000s. But you're going to have co-pays for different types of services, co-pays for specialists, co-pays for surgeries, co-pays for advanced imaging. Really where that max out of pocket generally comes into play is infusions. Chemotherapy, for example, across the board on Advantage plans, infusions are covered at 80%. If you're paying 20% of chemo, you're going to hit your max out of pocket. And they generally range anywhere from about $4,000 to $7,500, just depending on the plan and where you reside. They vary a little bit. Again, these plans, they do include prescription, dental, vision, so they do have some added benefits. It's one of those things where, again, there's not a one size fits all. It's an evaluation. It's determining what makes the most sense for you, either based on your current health, based on the preferences that you have and the way that you approach insurance. Do you prefer to pay on the front end with a supplement and know that if something like a chemotherapy scenario comes up, that you have a few $100s that's your worst case scenario or liability? Or do you say, you know what, I'd rather not prepay the insurance company. I'd like to keep the money in my pocket. And yeah, I'm going to have co-pays here, co-pays there. And if a chemotherapy situation pops up, I know that I'm going to have a few $1,000s that I'm going to be out of pocket for. So that's kind of the approach to that. And again, sometimes it's more black and white on what somebody should do than somebody else, but it's an evaluation there. But that's a snapshot of how Advantage plans look. And again, they do vary from not even state to state, but even county to county. So as we wrap up here, I was trying to keep us as close to a half hour as possible. Our starting point is always going to be Medicare Part A and Part B, 2 federal parts of Medicare. Again, you really don't need to probably make a dive into both of those. If you're still working beyond age 65, the only exception to that is going to be if you work for a company that has 19 or fewer employees. At that point, talk to your HR team, talk to your insurance company, confirm that they will enforce that Medicare secondary payer guideline. If you work for a company with 20 or more employees, you're really doing an evaluation. What's better for me and for maybe your spouse remaining on the group health insurance plan, or do I waive my health insurance plan whenever I'm able to and maybe make a jump over to Medicare? At that point, we're looking at option 1 or option 2, going with a Medicare supplement and a standalone prescription drug plan, or we're looking at a Medicare Advantage plan. Depending on what direction you go, kind of dictates what cards you're carrying around. You go with a Medicare supplement plan, it's going to be red, white, and blue Medicare card, supplement, and prescription card. You have a Medicare Advantage plan, you're just going to have that one card, Aetna, United, Blue Cross Blue Shield, whoever it may be. So that is a kind of a crash course of information regarding Medicare, trying to keep it simple for you there. But myself, my team, we're happy to have conversations with you. If you'd like to have an individualized conversation, again, more than happy to do that. At this point, Ted, I'll go ahead and kick it back over to you for any questions.
All right, great. Well, thanks, Mike. We appreciate the time explaining Medicare to all of us. A few questions here that I'll throw at you. First one I want to just take care of. A question came out about emailing the slide deck out. We're not particularly going to send the slide deck out, but what we will be doing is we are recording this presentation, and we will be sending that recording, or I should say a link to that recording out. So if there's something in particular that you need, or of greater great value on a slide or two, certainly let me know, and we'll see what we can do. But otherwise, will be just be a recording that will be sent out here in the next few days. So some specific questions that came in here for you, Mike. If someone is approaching retirement, and does have, a meeting set up with an advisor, what should they be prepared with? What should they have when coming to that meeting or that discussion?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the first things I tell people that they should bring is a list of medications along with them. List of medications is going to be important from two different points. First of all, if you're looking at a Medicare supplement plan, you have to get a standalone prescription drug plan. There might be anywhere from 10 to 20 of them available in your county. We want to make sure that you're getting one that's appropriate. Second side is on a Medicare Advantage plan, if that's kind of the direction you're leaning and makes sense for you, because that coverage for prescriptions comes bundled in the plan. You might have one or two medications. If they're not covered, even though you really like that plan in terms of the medical, hospital, the dental, whatever you liked about it, if the prescription coverage is inadequate, it may not be the best fit for you. So medications, list of providers or doctors and hospitals that you want access to is always helpful. And then the last thing I would just say, come with an open mind. Don't take what your cousin or your friend told you as, hey, this is the greatest plan in the world. Come with an open mind, ready to have a conversation about yourself and what your needs are and what your preferences are. And I think that's the way that you end up coming away most satisfied with what you end up with.
All right, great. Thanks, Mike. Next question, which I think you hit on a little bit here, but out of all the plans that are out there for Medicare, and what you spoke to, and maybe some other ones that didn't have time for, but are there any plans that should be avoided?
I wouldn't say there's any that should be avoided. I would say it should be an evaluation. Again, if you have an advisor that you're working with, I think the one thing that always concerns me a little bit is if somebody comes to me later on and they met with somebody and that person just kind of came out and said, hey, here's this great plan for you. I'm always a little bit concerned if it's just one plan being thrown at you. I think as long as you are seeing a variety of options to start with, and then the conversation allows it to tailor to a plan, you're in good shape at that standpoint. So nothing to avoid, but just make sure that you're being shown a little bit of a broader spectrum to start with and allow it to be tailored based on your needs or your preferences.
All right. And last question here is, how often should I review my Medicare coverage?
I always recommend that my clients give me a call annually. A lot of times I would say it's actually a pretty brief call. Historically, a lot of these plans have not changed very much. But we like to just make sure that if there's a new prescription that's being provided to somebody, or in the event that there is a plan that has changed more than it historically has, we want to be on top of that. These Medicare plans are all set up as passive enrollment, so they will just roll over from year to year. There is no proactive enrollment that you need to make sure you're covered every year. They'll continue letting that roll on. But again, I think a quick phone call to your advisor, whoever you're working with, is always very beneficial. There's no downside to that, and that way you do catch if there are any changes to your plan. So once a year is adequate, and that's that October 15th to December 7th timeframe.
Okay. And one more question that just popped up. It says here, I turned 65 on May 3rd, never received a Medicare card. However, I am not retiring until December 31st, 2025. I will apply for Social Security a few months ahead of that, but are you saying I need to apply for Medicare now since the company I work for is under 19 employees? Doesn't my health care or my health insurance cover at this point?
I would definitely have a conversation with your HR department, or whoever handles the benefits at your company, and make sure that they get an answer from your group health insurance plan, because I would say most group health plans at this point are requiring that employees that are with a company of 19 or fewer do utilize Medicare as their primary. And what can happen is if you have claims and they have you noted in their system as a small employer, they would only pay what they would have paid had Medicare paid on the front end. So it can leave some some larger financial obligations to yourself if there's not a primary insurance and then group health plans only paying what they would have paid otherwise. So have a conversation with your HR team, make sure they get an answer from the group health insurance company that they utilize. And if they do say, yes, you need to sign up, or you didn't use it as primary, yes, sign up for A and B as soon as you can.
All right, great. Well, thanks, Mike. We'll wrap it up there. And thanks to all the attendees for being on the call today. If you have a question or you submitted a question we were unable to get to, we will certainly follow up with you directly. If anyone has any specific questions that they think of afterwards, certainly feel free to reach out to me at JFS or Mike at Davic and or the 800 number that's listed here. And as a reminder, if you did miss any part of the webinar, again, a recording will be sent via email to all attendees in the next few days. We sincerely appreciate your attendance and hope you enjoyed the topic and learned something of value. We look forward to you joining us again in the future, and thank you very much. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.